Hi, good morning. I'd like to welcome you all to today's The Secrets of Interpreting Body Language. I hope you can all hear me right now.
Yes.
Great, fantastic. So how this is going to work is, thank you for your responses, is that we're going to have the questions and answers at the end of the session today. So you will all be on mute initially, and so do mute yourselves, and we'll get started. A lot of people are still joining in. I also hope that you can see me. You can indicate to me on the chat whether you can see me right now. Just say yes if you can see me. Fantastic.
Yes.
Thank you. Great. So now we'll proceed on all going on to mute as the other participants are loading. Hope you're all having a wonderful day so far today. Again, just welcoming you to the session, the 45 minutes introduction to the masterclass on the secrets of interpreting body language. You will have 15 minutes, or if we finish a little earlier on the presentation, you'll have a little bit more time to ask me questions after the presentation. So what we're going to be covering today is, as you can see on the presentation in front, we're going to be looking at a little bit at what the one-day workshop actually comprises of. It's usually a 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. workshop, and that's why it's known as the master class. So the objective is to really learn how to baseline, decode, and connect with others using body language. Now, one thing I just want to bring to your attention is that a lot of people say, well, what do you mean by baseline and decode? What does that mean? Well, basically, the entire course really is focused on learning how you can cater your body language to influence people and to build connections with others. Can we do this through baselining and decoding? Baselining is basically being able to read, and decoding is being able to understand. Okay, why do we have this course? Why is it a course that resonates so well with most people? Well, it's really because of the fact that when you're building connections with other people, you're also enforcing a sense of human connection. And really nothing is more important than human connection at the end of the day. What is human connection? How is it defined? Human connection is defined as an energy exchange between people who are paying attention to one another. And when you have really effective human communication, then human connection can take place. And that has to deepen the moment, to inspire change in others, and to build trust. Okay, so you will be exposed during this workshop to one of the brightest and best minds in the industry of body language, experts who have been in this field for 25 years plus, such as the likes of Joe Navarro, who's an FBI and interrogation expert, and many other body language experts as well. But at the same time, you're also going to be having a lot of fun while you're learning. There'll be quizzes, there'll be fun facts, there's going to be examples of real life people, politicians that we all know of. There's going to be videos as well. But at the same time, being that I'm a very science-oriented trainer, a lot of my research is backed up by neuroscience, you will also be hit with a little bit of hard science as well. And for that reason, I will also be giving you a lot of evolutionary theories and also the nature of how your brain works. So you leave this course learning a lot more about yourself than you actually thought you knew. And that's why I also like to say that this course is a bit of a self-discovery journey, because by the end of the course, you're going to figure out what your primary rep system is and also how you move as a human being. You're going to learn some really unique things, such as how to use your hands and feet to become a magnetic communicator. In fact, sometimes participants come to me at the beginning of the session saying, we really want to learn how to communicate more confidently. A lot of women come to me and say, we just want to appear more confident in the workplace. Or some people might even say, sometimes our emotions can be seen on our face, we want to learn how to hide our emotions. And others come to me and say, well, we'd like to read into what other people are saying. We'd like to understand a little bit more about hidden intentions. What do people really mean when they speak to you? And we cover all of this. We cover things such as congruency, which I'll talk about a little bit later on, but it's all about how people's tone matches their body language. And so we're able to kind of later on assess whether people are saying what they truly mean or not. Now, throughout this course, you'll also be receiving a digital manual, because the next course that's going to happen is on June 16th. And as we all know, it will be a Zoom-based course. So you will be having a digital manual with all the background information as well. But first, as it's always important, really good to introduce the trainer. Makes a big difference to you doing any courses. You should know about your trainer and a little bit about the background. So I'll just give you a brief background on myself. My name is Pamela Pujakirpalani, and I run a training and coaching company called Inner High Living in Singapore. I'm an adjunct trainer with AventisLearning, and I've been in this industry since 2011. And actually, I've been teaching this course for the last 6 years now. So this very course. So what's great is that the feedback's been excellent, and each year I actually update it with even more of the latest neuroscience and research that's in the field. How did I begin this whole journey? Well, I began it actually training neurolinguistic programming and coaching people in neurolinguistic programming. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of neurolinguistic programming, but it's basically an understanding the science of the subconscious mind and how to achieve results with others. Now, one of my favorite areas in NLP or neurolinguistic programming is to learn how nonverbal communication can infiltrate the subconscious mind and achieve results with others. So my objective for this course, whoever joins, is to teach you all how to read a set of extremely effective non-verbal techniques that you can seamlessly incorporate into your daily communications, not just in your work, but even in your home life, in your social life, with your families. And people always ask me, well, what is it about this workshop that resonates with so many participants? Well, why? Well, it's all because actually it's about bringing all that you know as a human being subconsciously about body language into the conscious mind. So I like to describe it as kind of untangling all the cobwebs in your mind. And, suddenly you'll get an aha moment. Or you'll understand why the person did the thing that they did, or you'll understand why they felt uncomfortable. You'll be able to piece things together. So moving on, we'll move on to our first slide. Welcome to all those who have just joined. Great. So at the end of a one-day course on the secrets of interpreting body language, these are the objectives that I have set out for you all to kind of walk out with, okay? And I'm going to explain to you a little bit about it now. Number one, you're going to get some valuable tools on how to use body language to develop that level of subconscious and unconscious rapport, okay? Because the truth is that the subconscious mind, or some people like to call it the unconscious mind, it actually plays a large role in reading others. In fact, there's some research to even say that it's 500,000 times faster than the conscious mind, okay? Secondly, you're also going to learn how to baseline and read body language. So we talked a little bit on the first slide about baselining and decoding, didn't we? Now, what do we mean by that? Well, being able to judge someone's body language and behavior, and then being able to figure out if someone is interested in perhaps what you have to offer or on what's going on around them, whether they're uncomfortable about something that you might have said or that someone else might have done, or what their body language is saying about the mood that they're in, okay? Or perhaps even where they are referencing their memories and their thoughts from. Okay, now as a result of these two that you do see down there, the idea is that you are going to get valuable information on how to have people feel more connected to you. So creating better connections. Next, now, most people actually have a misconception that non-verbal communication equals body language, okay? The truth is, it is so much more than that. Non-verbal communication encompasses 4 different aspects. I'm going to warm up your minds to that right now. Kinesics. Kinesics purely means body language. Paralanguage. Paralanguage refers to the voice. Haptics. Haptics refers to touch, how we touch others. And proxemics. Proxemics refers to the distance, the appearance, and the environment. Okay? Now, in this workshop, we're going to cover this from time to time. We're going to look at mostly at kinesics and haptics, but I will also explain to you about proxemics. I'll explain to you about intimate distances that you can keep with people. Personal distances, so for example, interactions among good friends or with family members. How far do you really need to stand from people or sit with people? And then we'll look into social distance, okay, which is a term that we've heard quite a bit recently, haven't we? Now, that is actually the amount of space that you should have between interactions among strangers. Okay, so I will be sharing that with you as well. So it's important to know that a big focus of, we tend to assume that body language and nonverbal communication are the same thing. It's definitely not, and it encompasses these 4 aspects. This is a fun part. We're going to also explore body language in different countries. So I'm sure most of you have had experience interacting. Singapore is a very international and diverse climate. So I'm sure most of you had the experience of interacting with international clients, or perhaps expatriates, or perhaps you work in a firm where, you're working, perhaps your boss is an expatriate, or, there's certain clues as to what cultural body language is like, So for example, today I'd like to ask you here, and a lot of people during my workshops always kind of get stumped at this point. Where, and you don't have to answer this, but in your mind, you can perhaps just, think about it. In which country is this sign over here, the OK sign, actually taken as a sign of money? I'm going to give you the answer now. In Japan, what we associate as an OK sign is actually the sign for money. And so when people need to ask for their bills in restaurants, or perhaps, they're talking about checks, this will come up. So we're going to cover a little bit about the, cultural differences in body language. Next, just to give you all a bit of a flavor, the truth is our nonverbal behavior and our body language actually makes such a big impression on others. And once you learn the impact of how much your body language silently says about you, you'll never quite be the same again. So here we're going to explore and delve into the research of what the greatest experts have been saying about what our impact is on communication. We're also going to be having a look at how quick it takes to make a first impression, a good first impression. So all this just by learning about the importance of body language when you're interacting with people. In the first part of the workshop, we're also going to be covering the science of meeting people. Okay, this is where it gets really interesting, because at the end of the day, wouldn't you like to know what factor makes the biggest impact when you meet someone for the first time? So here we're going to be looking at two parameters. We're going to be exploring, okay, which parameter, and I will not tell you the two parameters now to make it more interesting for you when you do the workshop, but we're going to explore which parameter actually makes the biggest impact on you when you meet someone for the first time. Now, the truth is, our brains are actually hardwired to read others. I just want you to imagine, and you don't have to say anything because you're all on mute, but I'd just like you to imagine you're walking on the street, let's say you're on Orchard Road. You happen to bump into your friend, okay? You exchange greetings. What have you guys been up to during the lockdown? Talk about your families and, have a really nice interaction with your masks on. And as she walks away from you and you walk away from her, you suddenly hear a thump and a big sound, like an ouch, okay? And what's actually happened is as you turn around, you notice your friend has fallen down. Now, what's your first instinct? Your first instinct will be to immediately flinch. That's your first bodily reaction. All right, now this ability that we all have as human beings to instinctively and immediately understand what other people around you are experiencing it's actually long baffled neuroscientists. They couldn't figure it out. What was it that enables us to really understand what someone else is going through? But recent research now suggests a fascinating phenomenon going on inside our minds. And this phenomenon is known as mirror neurons. Now, we have mirror neurons, all of us, you, I, everybody around us. We all have mirror neurons in our brains that fire when our subconscious minds register an emotion or an intention in someone else's behavior. Now, we talk about this phenomenon in the workshop, and the phenomenon and how it got discovered by scientists as well by looking at monkeys' brains. We'll also talk about how it contributes to emotional contagion and how the September 11 attacks are a good example of mirror neurons working in action. So that's why over here you have the slide of, if you can see the people running from the September 11. We'll talk a little bit about that during the workshop as well. So all this is very important to your understanding of why it is, how body language actually works in real life and how our brains are working towards understanding body language and how we are hardwired to understand body language as well. Next, now we're going to get into the nitty gritty. So we're going to start looking at actual techniques. And this is usually after the first break. So here we're going to be looking at how people move their eyes around when they want to express something. And we want to look at how people move their eyes. Okay, that's the first thing. And where their eyes are going and what their eyes are trying to say, where they are referencing their thoughts and their memories from. Now, a big clue, this is a huge clue to understand whether people are more visual, people are more auditory, whether they're more kinesthetic, or whether they're more rational. Now, this is great when you're trying to communicate with someone and to get onto the same wavelength as them. And this is so important in human connection. So you guys are really going to learn some really cool techniques in watching people's eye movements. Now, there is even some evidence to say that someone could be fabricating the truth when they look in a certain direction. And you can definitely learn that from the way their eyes move. So during the course, we're going to look into this in much more detail. Next, baselining physiology in people. So watching the way people move is essential to understanding what kind of person they are. And in the world of social psychology, we call this primary representational systems. Now, at this stage, you'll be able to figure out what kind of primary representation you operate in. So, for example, are you more the type of person who tends to, if you're going to a workshop, physically going to a workshop or physically going to watch a movie or, going to a speech, do you tend to sit in the front of the room? Are you the type of person to write more notes? Do you like to take more notes? When you're learning a piece of information, do you tend to memorize things by visualizing the image in your mind? Okay, by visualizing pictures? Or do you tend to pay attention to appearances and grooming more? All right, that's one type of category of person. Or perhaps you're the type of person who prefers to learn by audiobooks, okay? And you have a tendency towards memorizing things in steps and procedures, perhaps. Uh, you might even have the habit of tapping your pen. Do some of you tap your pen or shake your leg while you're learning? Perhaps you could be that type of rep system. Or perhaps you could be the type of rep system that prefers to learn things by actively getting involved. There's some people that don't want to learn things by just watching and listening. They actually want to get involved and do the activity physically. And are you able to pick up on things fast? Are you intuitive? And do you notice that at times you may even move your hands a lot while you talk? So all these categories are really interesting because they enable you to assess what dominant representational system you come from. And guess what? Once you are able to identify yours, you'll also be able to identify other people's representational systems by just looking and observing their characteristics and their physiology. Now, when I talk about physiology, what I'm referring to is how they move. Very, very important in assessing someone's rep system. Okay. So we're going to be covering this. And then we're also going to be looking at the handshake. Now, from the handshake, we're going to assess, it's extremely interesting because you're going to be able to assess when someone shakes your hand for the first time, are they trying to take control or are they trying to give control to you? What is the hidden intention through their handshake? By the way, they have no idea they're doing this, okay? But you'll be able to pick up on this by the angle of their handshake and the pressure. So that's something we're going to talk about, dismissive or submissive handshakes. Now, the best part of this topic, of course, is watching our most favorite Donald Trump do one of his yanks with, over here, as you can see, this is his Supreme Court Justice, main guy. Well, I'll be showing a lot of pictures of handshakes. In fact, even with the Queen, the Queen of England, how she uses the handshake to assert her authority with a famous footballer, and how the Pope and Obama actually express humility through their handshakes. So you will also, in this part of the workshop, be able to access your manual. And in your manual, there'll be fantastic presentation on actually how to shake hands the right way. And we will explore this, okay? We will explore the interesting history of how the handshake even began in the first place during the Roman times. So a lot of fun things on the handshake. In the live workshop, I actually have people come in the front and we watch the way they shake hands. I usually have 2 men come in the front and we watch the way they shake hands, and it always incites a lot of laughter. Great. Then we're going to look at how do you move your hands when you speak? Have you ever thought about that? Who here on this call at work presents in teams, or gives speeches, or perhaps you have to do a presentation once a month in a boardroom, or maybe some of you might even go up on stage, who knows? Now the thing is, have you ever considered where your hands are, where your palms are facing when you're talking? Now, this is something people actually never really pay attention to. They don't really consider it. So here we're going to talk about why the hands are so critical in baselining body language and what type of palm gestures you can actually use to make a real impact, because scientific research actually shows that there are more nerve connections between the hands and the brain than there are with any other part of the body. And so because of that, the gestures that you take with your hands actually give other people powerful insights into your emotional state. So wouldn't you want to be able to get that under your grip? No pun intended. And in this part of the workshop, I'll also be sharing with you a TED Talk study that reveals the secrets behind palm gestures as well. So we're going to be exploring five different types of hand gestures that people use on a daily basis. This is called the open palm gesture, the downward palm gesture, the aggressive palm gesture, the precision thumb gesture, and the steepling palm gesture. Now, with all these 5 hand gestures, you're going to be examining whether a person is appearing to be dominant or whether they're confident in the way that they're speaking, whether someone is trying to appeal to you, okay, whether they're trying to appeal, they're trying to get you to agree with them. They're using their kinesthetic sense to get you to agree to them. And how people also, how they express interest. So for example, what is it that people do with their hands when they're interested in someone else? Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, we have the 5 palm gestures. We're going to cover that. I always use politicians because politicians are experts in body language. They've been taught these things. Now, the majority of the population haven't. So you're going to kind of get access to all these kind of very neuroscience-backed body language tips that politicians and business leaders and speakers get access to, which the general population and public don't. So it's very interesting in that sense. That's why people actually really enjoy learning these concepts, because nobody really knows about it. So by this point of the presentation, you're going to be learning, what we've covered so far is mostly, we talked about the eyes and we talked about the hands, the upper body and the head, right? So now, at this point in the presentation, we're going to move on and focus on the lower part of the body and the legs. Okay, and that's why the slide says interpreting body language in social and business settings. We're going to be looking at body angling. We're going to look at something called inclusion and exclusion techniques. How do you know if you're being included or excluded in a group, in a networking or business environment? Okay. We're going to be looking at gestures that claim a sense of ownership and authority. So is someone trying to appear territorial in front of you? That's something that's interesting to know. Or perhaps someone's trying to impress you. So in that sense, we're going to learn about body expansion and slaying. We're also going to learn about gestures that people use when they're feeling scared. So that they use to form psychological barriers. Now, a lot of these things people don't realize they're doing. So you're going to have access to kind of figuring out what's really going on. That they're not consciously doing these. These are all subconscious gestures that they're doing. In the same line of thinking, we're going to be looking at subliminal fear-based gestures too, how our head indicates interest, how our head position actually indicates interest, and how to look at someone's eyes to tell if they're interested or they're keen. So there's a lot of information there. This will be post the lunch break, and we begin it always about what the feet says about your interest or someone else's interest levels. So for example, have you ever been talking to someone and had the feeling that he or she would rather be elsewhere than with you? It's kind of like a gut feeling that you get that he doesn't really want to be with you at that moment. Yeah, like this picture over here. Even though he seems to be enjoying your company. I'm sure we've all been through this, haven't we? So at this point, we're going to be learning about what the feet really say about you, okay? How to spot where someone's feet are pointed and looking at the direction of feet, and when someone is subconsciously trying to break rapport with you using their feet, okay? So that's what this section of the presentation is going to be focusing on. And then we're going to be looking at one of the most interesting and subtle territorial gestures, and that's called splaying. Now, splaying happens when the arms or legs are spread apart and the body becomes expansive and you end up taking more space in the room. Now, splaying is also known as a power pose, and we're going to examine the evolution of the power pose and our 3 power zones of our body too. At the same time, we're also going to look at the difference between men and women's power poses, okay? We're going to look at the 3 ways women can display confidence in the workplace or outside using the power pose, all right? Now, there are some gestures that are fear-based. And how can you tell if someone is uncomfortable in a situation? We're going to explore different ways people portray fear or discomfort by how they protect their body. Now, as you can see in this picture over here, the girl is doing something called a fear-based or partial cross-barrier gesture, where she's covering the core of her body. Okay, this is known as a fear-based gesture. Again, largely subconscious. People don't realize that they're doing it. We're also going to have a look at the differences in men and women, in men and women when they convey fear. As you can see over here, we have 3 pictures of men. They're displaying some levels of subliminal fear. Now, when I'm talking about fear, I don't necessarily mean that someone's scared and they're going to run out of a room. No, I'm talking about even discomfort. So perhaps that person has heard something and it's triggered something uncomfortable in their brains, and they move suddenly, and you're able to baseline to see, did I say something wrong? And then you can correct that. Or perhaps they're watching something that's disturbing. You're able to pick up on that straight away and kind of, mold your conversation to help that person come out of that situation. After we cover the fear-based gestures, I mentioned we're going to be looking at how we tilt our head. So our head positions, and which head position conveys the most interest in any situation. So what can you do to appear more interested in someone else while they are speaking to you? This is a huge asset in the workplace. For example, if you're stuck in a conversation and you feel like it's going nowhere, the minute you express interest towards that other person, that you're really interested in what they have to say, you'll see a whole dynamic change. So how can you use your body language to convey that nonverbal interest? Now, after we covered that section, you're going to have another very small coffee break, and then we're going to move on to the next part of our workshop, and this is called the building rapport part. Now, at this point, we're almost at the end of the day, and you're going to be learning 3 techniques, which are subliminal influence techniques that can help you build rapport. So what do we mean by that? Well, in other words, the other person doesn't really know that you're doing these techniques, but it's all done from a very ethical standpoint. It's just for you to be able to connect to people better and be able to create better relationships, especially with someone new. Especially if you notice someone's feeling uncomfortable, how do you make them feel comfortable with you? That's what we want to do with this part of the workshop, and this is called the building rapport part of the workshop. So in this workshop, we're actually going to define rapport. We're actually going to look at the definition, and what I like to term it, because I have my own definition for rapport, and we're going to look at something called the chameleon effect and the similarity effect, and how matching people's wavelength makes such a big difference in building rapport. This is our first technique we're going to be looking at. Now, the most effective technique to initially connect and build rapport with somebody new is to have them feel, like I said earlier, that you are on the same wavelength as them. Okay, and one of the most well-known and widely used techniques for this is known as mirroring and matching. And I'm not sure how many of you have heard of this before, but the majority of the population hasn't been exposed to this technique. And mirroring and matching, what is it? It's simply the way that you echo someone else's body language. Now, I'm going to go into a lot more detail in this during the workshop. For example, I'm going to be giving you the rules of it, how long you have to wait before you echo their body language. I'm also going to be explaining to you what type of things you can copy, which make an impact. And then we have a fun video to watch showing the impact of mirroring and matching, an actual live experiment. And I always show this video at my workshops because it really shows you how it works. In my live workshops, which I do obviously now once the lockdown does get over and we actually end up doing the live workshops, I actually have you practice mirroring and matching in groups and with your partners. And it's a great activity because you need to practice it to really get it into your neurology. So we'll be covering mirroring and matching. And then we're also going to be looking at the power of touch. Now, I don't know if some of you remember what I talked about right in the third slide when we talked about haptics, how touch makes such a big difference in the way you communicate with people. Okay, and so I have a slide here of these NBA players. These NBA players are known to do a lot of chest bumps, high fives, back slaps. I grew up watching NBA, and a lot of studies actually show that the way that the NBA players touch each other provide a huge impact on their results, on the seasons, the end seasons results. So we're gonna watch a video, and we're also gonna talk about how the human touch is a brief and powerful reminder that we are at our core, as human beings, we're actually social animals. And studies have shown that a brief touch can influence and actually make others feel more amenable towards us. Now, what do I mean by amenable? I mean that they feel more connected. They feel that we're friendly and that we're approachable. That's what I mean when I talk about amenable. Now, with the power of touch in this part of the workshop, you're going to learn where to touch people and the timing of that touch. And that's where the magic really happens, okay? The third subliminal influence technique is called the kindly brontosaurus gesture. And it's known to be the pose that can get you what you want, especially when you're in dire straits. So I usually wrap up the session with this fun and powerful technique, which was actually only developed in 2016. And what they found is that it's actually a really effective technique. Perhaps, let's say you're not able to get a table at a restaurant, or you need to move up a queue because maybe your child is not well, or perhaps you have an emergency and you can't get your airline seat. So, these are for really dire situations. You use the kindly brontosaurus, and I will show you how to do it. And the great thing about the kindly brontosaurus gesture is that the techniques I teach you, as I mentioned earlier about the hands and the feet, and how we move our bodies will all be incorporated into this. So that's why I really like to end the session with the kindly brontosaurus gesture. So great, I'm really grateful to have all of you here today. And thank you for all being so, you've all been very sweet and, expressed that you could hear me, and, you've all, I would love to interact with all of you on a later basis. But what we're going to do now is we're going to open up the question and answer session. Before we do that, I'm just going to give you a quick glance at the Aventis group. As I mentioned, I'm an adjunct trainer with Aventis. And these are 2 slides on that. And this is the link if you'd like to register for the course. That's coming up on June 16th. We'll be doing a Zoom session. Please do sign up for this live streaming course. You can do this now, or you can do this. I'm going to leave this up here. You can scan this code now to register, or after the questions and answers session. So we're going to have the next 15 to 20 minutes, I'll be answering your questions. So feel free to start asking. And by the way, if you'd like to ask a question, feel free to unmute yourself. Hi. Okay. Someone has asked, Tracy Ang, will this deck of slides be shared? I will be using a PowerPoint presentation. All right, definitely. And you will get access to these slides and more during the presentation. However, this particular, what we've done today will not be shared with you. Because it's basically just an explanation of what is going to happen during the course. So you're better off attending the actual course and then being able to see, being able to actually get all the information properly. Okay, Xian Lim has asked, hi, can you share how in current COVID times body language will change? Very good question, because everyone is masked and you can't see their full expressions. Yeah, so obviously this is a temporary situation. And this is why, and I'm very grateful that when I embarked on this program, I chose not to focus too much on the face during the course, because it's very important for me to be able to express how the rest of the body is communicating. So even with masks on, you're still able to see what people are communicating. Because we have there's a lot of emphasis on the upper body and the lower body, right? So we want to focus on how people are moving their hands, how they're moving their feet. So you don't really need to see people's full expressions in order to gauge, for example, like what they're actually trying to express. Okay, is this somehow related to ontology? I'll answer that in a bit. Anith has asked, territorial gesture, splaying, wouldn't be in use in corporate formal environments? Sorry, could you ask that question again, because I'm not so clear on what you mean by that. So are you asking, would this be used in corporate and formal environments? Yes, if it's subtle splaying. You obviously, that slide you saw was basically a man splaying with his legs wide open, right? That's not something that you're going to do, right? Men usually do that in leadership, and they do it when they're dating. But in corporate environments, so this is a good question if this is what I think you're asking, you can use power poses, which are subtle forms of splaying. And that's what I mentioned earlier, that there are three gestures I will be teaching you, especially women, on how to use power poses in the workplace. Okay. Wow, a lot of questions. Okay. Hi, the content you shared is very similar to NLP. As I mentioned, I am an NLP trainer and coach. However, I don't focus on the hypnotherapy processes and the scripts. I'm just focusing mostly on the nonverbal communication aspect. And I don't actually use that much NLP, believe it or not, in this workshop. I use it in my other workshops. Here I use a lot of research and science from FBI experts who really study the body very well. Are there chances whereby we will misunderstand unintentional body movements, or will it be 100%? Very, very good. We're now in the actual workshop, we're going to be talking about 3 factors. We're going to be talking about congruence. I love this question. We're going to be talking about congruence. We're going to be talking about context, and we're also going to be talking about something else as well that will give us clues as to whether the information is 100% correct. Now, I use cue clusters where you look at least 3 pieces of body language. So you assess someone by looking maybe perhaps at their eyes, at their arms, and at their legs to assess something. Now, only then can you make an accurate assessment. Otherwise, these are just clues Okay, so we're not telling you that this is 100%, but these are clues. And these are universal clues to how people move, because at the end of the day, even though we're culturally driven, our brains all operate in the same way. Our neurons all operate in the same way. Okay, Jocelyn asks, hi Pamela, for haptics, how do we ensure that the level of touch, sorry, let me scroll down, is appropriate, even in a professional setting? Okay, we're gonna talk about that. Since there would be people who are not comfortable to touch, exactly. So what I'm gonna be doing is teaching you, very good question, when and when not to touch people, how to do it, okay? And you're gonna be listening to another lady called Carolyn Ginsman. She'll appear on one of the videos. She'll also explain to you where the appropriate place is. Now, obviously in Asia, we don't touch people that much in the workplace. But between women to women, there is definite possibilities of building rapport using quick touch. So we're going to cover that in the presentation. Also, for those who do not want to shake hands with opposite gender, I'm going to teach you a technique that will help you kind of get out of it in a nice way. Anita says yes. Okay, thanks. Ping says, Ken recommend some of the readings, book on body language. I'll be doing that during the course. I'll be telling you who to read about, and also who to follow. I don't know how many of you have Twitter accounts. So I can give you a name of experts that I follow. Now going back to the question, feel free to just shoot out more questions, but someone asked, basically, is this similar to ontology? Ontology is more about metaphysics. So are you referring to neurolinguistic programming when you're asking, is this similar to ontology? If you are, it's still not the same thing. Neurolinguistic programming has nothing to do with ontology. Although we do deal with the science of the mind, but I think it's more related to, it's more of a metaphysical concept. Yeah, so that's not really something that we cover in our courses, and definitely not this one. This is really body language. If you'd like to ask a question, please feel free to ask the question on the chat so that there's no interference. These are great questions, by the way.
Wait, it's okay.
If you're having problems asking questions,
I check first. Wait, I check. Maybe you pass already.
I'm just putting someone on mute. Okay. Any more questions, guys? Okay, if not, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, oh, thank you, okay. Like Tracy said, no. If there are no more questions, will we still have another 10 minutes? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remain available for you over here. Oh, okay, someone has asked, can we consider semiotic theory in exploring body language? Can you exemplify that a little bit more? What do you mean by that? Makita, you asked a question on semiotic theory. I just want to... Semiotics is actually a different branch, okay? And it's not something that we will be covering. We're covering mostly about body language and how the mind response, how our subconscious mind reacts to people's body language gestures. How do we portray our body language? Are we portraying our body language in the wrong way? So how do we do it? How do we appear more confident? Yeah, it's actually very simple, and there's a few techniques that you're going to learn. So no, it's got nothing to do with semiotics or ontology. Victor is saying, can you share the detailed topics for this course? Okay, so that's what this whole presentation was, actually, Victor. I don't know when you signed in, but I gave you the outline for the detailed structured topics. So if you wanted, like on an email, or you'd like to see the line by line description of each, you know, I will not be disclosing exactly everything, because you know that will be pages and pages, but you can get a brief, you will get a structure and a rough outline from Aventis if you'd like. But that was the purpose of today's presentation. So I hope you picked up on whatever that we said we were going to cover. Okay, so far no more questions, but I'm here, I'm available. Okay, great. Yeah, I saw your message, Victor. That's what I meant. Thanks. Someone has private messaged me, will the session be free or charged? No, the session will definitely be, there will be a charge for the full day. It begins at 9 a.m. and it ends by 4:30, 4:45. Sometimes we go up to 5 p.m. You're welcome. I'm getting a lot of private messages over here. Thank you. Yes, thank you everyone who's sent me those messages. I really love the seminar. Makita says, may I ask, what is the chameleon effect? Is it the same as mirroring and matching? Very good question. We have the chameleon effect as the basis for mirroring and matching. So I'll be discussing that during the workshop. And that goes into the evolution. So for example, why is it that the chameleon effect is so effective when we communicate with others? So what is it about matching yourself on the same wavelength about someone else that really connects people to you? Oh, that was a private message sent by Makita. So yes, your question was, is the chameleon effect the same as mirroring and matching? It forms the basis of it. Someone had a question on, I received a private message saying, yes, that they would like to know more about it. So you can, so what I think, once you register, you'll be able to get more information on the timings and the break times, and basically what the course will, you know, like the structure of the course, if that's what you're asking. I'm thinking that's what you're asking right now. Okay, if there's no more questions, I'm still here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this screen again so that you're able to click on the actual, one second, the code, so to register. Can you all see it on the chat? Could you just let me know that you can see the code? Okay, great, fantastic. And nothing's blocking it? Okay, fantastic. Great. So go ahead and scan it. We have 4 more minutes. So if anyone wants to ask any more questions, feel free. You're welcome, Serene. I hope that was interesting. Yes, getting a lot of private messages. Thank you. Very sweet of you all. You're welcome. Thank you all. You're welcome. Okay, someone's asked me about mirror neurons on a private message. Okay, regarding the mirror neurons, go ahead. Okay, Makita is asking me to tackle the mirror neurons, to talk about mirror neurons again. So there's no time to do that, but she wants me to briefly tackle it again. That's what this workshop is for. So when you come to the workshop, you'll be able to learn a little bit about mirror neurons. It's a very fascinating phenomenon. Thank you. Oh, someone's asked, how do I know? Oh, okay, all right. So how do I know all this? It's because I've been trained in the field and been, as I said, from 2011, been, studying this field and being up to date with all the latest experts. I track people down on my Twitter feed like crazy. Yes, plus the NLP helps a little bit too, I have to say. But in general, I think that my interest level in this topic has really brought me to where I am right now. So I'm also working with, alongside and studying with FBI experts in the States as well. Someone has asked me, what is the difference between kinesics and haptics? The 4 types. Okay, so I explained that. So kinesics is, we have 1 minute left, so I'm going to quickly go through it again. Kinesics is body language. Haptics is touch. Paralanguage is voice. And do you guys remember the last one? Proxemics, that's distance and appearance and environment. Okay. So we're going to have to, I love the questions, but unfortunately we're going to have to wind up because it's 11:59. Lovely messages I'm getting. Thank you guys. So do sign up and I look forward to seeing you on June 16th. Okay.